Wow. So you basically saying agentic commerce is not about like buying everyday stuff that we've been buying so far, but it's rather about like specific tools that certain group of people are using. Do I understand it correctly?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, today there's people love shopping and they love the e-commerce experience. And I think in many ways, trying to augment that or move that away is going to be very tough and it's going to take time. And, I definitely see a role for sort of traditional commerce moving from e-commerce to more agentic. But I think the
Okay.
bigger opportunity and the more near-term opportunity is how do we enable developers to, build things and access tools that they otherwise wouldn't, and doing it in a way in which the agent is actually doing the transaction rather than the developer themselves.
Can you give me one example so that I understand it better? Because I'm trying to understand how that would work underneath, I mean, under the hood.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess from the outset, I think this is something that Simon Taylor, who I respect very deeply in the industry, has talked a lot about. Where I think what we're starting to see is developers are coming to something like a Claude Code, and they want to accomplish a task, and that
Yeah.
task may require different resources, different skills, different inputs to make it happen. So for example, if I'm building something that is in the crypto world, I maybe need to access some sort of data, some sort of on-chain data to build it out. And today, like if I wanted to go and access that data, I would need to go to a on-chain data provider. I would need to go and get an enterprise contract and maybe meet with the sales team and then, commit to some sort of long-term agreement. And what we're seeing is that for example, there's tools like Allium who have, for example, an X402 endpoint where I just tell, my agent, I want to go and, get this data. It
Okay.
identifies the right endpoint, in this case being Allium, and then allows me to pay for it on a one-time basis. And so what that means is, maybe I'm doing a weekend project where I need some sort of data or need some sort of tool. I don't want to go and do this whole enterprise B2B onboarding and sales channel, sales journey. I just want to access it now and purchase it. And frankly, I think the best tools for this type of
Hmm.
agentic commerce are ones where, there's probably not a lot of opinion in the developer and what they want to access. Their brand is probably a lot less relevant. And so they're just asking for, they're going into one of these things, they're asking for an outcome and they don't really care the input of it. And I think if you compare that to something like, booking travel, I think
Okay.
people have deep opinions of, what airline they want to do, what, their loyalty and rewards and things like that. And so I think there's more opinion there. Whereas in this case, I think if you believe that data between multiple providers is more or less the same, I really care
Hmm.
more about will this, input give me the right output.
Don't you think? So in this case, I'm looking at this like, let's say I'm a developer, as you mentioned, but I work for a company. But I cannot just go and buy anything I want, right? There are rules that I have to follow within the company to, let's say, buy something. Do you think those rules would prevent me, like let's say my AI agent, from making the purchase? Isn't it easier to implement agentic commerce rather for retail customers who just go and buy something, let's say, on e-commerce website?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, I think that it would be somewhat skeuomorphic to believe that a lot of this type of commerce is going to be coming from traditional enterprises and traditional companies who are accessing tools. In fact, I think the bigger opportunity is that really what tools like Claude Code are doing is it's massively expanding, first who a developer can be, and second what a company can be. I think the power of these tools is I can now put together a 10 to 15 person engineering team that can go and build me a product in a weekend. And so I think we're going to see a massive explosion of single person or one person companies
Nice.
who want to go and build something and monetize and sell it. And now they have the infrastructure to do so. And so I agree with you that I think for traditional enterprises and companies that are building, they're probably going to default to whoever they have an enterprise agreement with, and they can go through that process because it's economically makes sense for them. But I think the bigger opportunity is that we're going to see a massive explosion of net new companies that are maybe one or two people building something in their basement on a weekend, and they need access to these tools, and maybe it doesn't make sense for them to have a long-term agreement to do so.